well. And after working for MGM Resorts, I was the chief marketing officer for Station Casinos or Red Rock Resorts before founding GMA Consulting with my other partners about 3 years ago.
There's
Hello, sorry about that. My name is Paris Smith. I'm the former CEO of Pinnacle. Pinnacle was renowned for taking esports bets. I think now it's 15 years. I used to say 10 years for too many years. And just through my tenure at Pinnacle, I was very immersed in the esports landscape with the team. And more or less by osmosis, I learned more about esports than I ever dreamt that I would. And now I'm advising, consulting, and starting a couple esports companies, and looking more at investments.
Hi. Excuse me. Now I see what I was with this mic. Anyway.
It's okay. We're from New Jersey. You can be loud.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anthony Strangia. I'm a Deputy Attorney General with the New Jersey Division of Gaming Enforcement. I'm in our Service Industry Licensing Bureau, where we license the entities and individuals that do business with New Jersey's casino industry. My primary focus is on internet gaming operators and sports betting operators as well.
Okay, so like in the first panel, Josh, which you missed, but that's okay. They did touch on the iGaming, its impact to Native American casinos in California. But my first question is going to be, how can the introduction of iGaming and sports wagering impact California's economy and tax revenue streams? So we're talking regarding the government at large, but also I'd like to include, or if you could include, Native America as well.
Sure. Was that to me, Ari? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to start with you. We'll go around.
Got it. Well, I mean, it goes without saying that the impact of potential impact of iGaming and sports wagering is going to be tremendous for the state of California. It is, one of, if not the, clear biggest market in the U.S. for both of those forms of wagering. And with a solid regulatory structure and taxation environment, it is going to be incredibly accretive. There have been some fits and starts with various groups that have tried to legalize sports betting and where they really wanted to deploy those tax revenue streams. I think in the long run, it's still probably, at least in my opinion, too early for me to really predict where specifically those tax revenues will be put to good use. But wherever that is, there will be plenty to go around.
So the same question, though, Anthony, I want you to just take from your knowledge of what's going to happen with the sports wagering in New Jersey and the iGaming the iGaming lift that New Jersey's experienced.
Yes, absolutely. So in New Jersey for the year 2023, gross revenue from internet gaming alone was $1.9 billion, and gross revenue from sports betting crossed the $1 billion threshold. The overwhelming majority of that money, 100% of the internet gaming revenue, and I think over 90% of the sports wagering revenue is taxed at 15% of the gross revenue. I'm a regulator, we tax gross revenue, so that's the only number I care about. So when you look at that and you do some quick math, it boils down to around almost $500 million in total tax revenue. California has a state population that I would say is quadruple the size of New Jersey, so I'd have every reason to expect that, when you look at a state like California, once they had a mature market, which I'll address in a second, they would hit those revenue numbers as well. So take what we have in New Jersey and quadruple that. So you could be looking at $2 billion in tax revenue if you legalize the commercial model of internet gaming and sports wagering that we have in New Jersey. I do think that you go hand in hand because when you look at sports, I know for a while it's over 80%, it might even be over 90% now. Sports wagers were placed, by a mobile app or on the internet, not actually in a retail sports book. The other thing I'd say is when New Jersey initially legalized internet gaming in 2013, the projected, I think, like gross revenue for the industry was $1 billion a year back then. And I think when it started out, it was only 150 million. It's grown year over year since then. So, California might face some of those challenges, assuming they want the commercial model in terms of, it takes a while for people to, explore apps, sign up, receive, be receptive to marketing. But I will say this, in New Jersey, we have like the revenue share model with market access agreements where every internet gaming operator needs to be partnered with a land-based casino. And then also too with the sports betting, each like internet sports betting site needs to be partnered with either a land-based casino or a racetrack or former racetrack. We did not see any cannibalization. Actually, our land-based casino revenue has grown over that time as well. It bottomed out, I think, at like 1.6 billion, and 2014 was a real bad year. We had 4 casinos close, and it bottomed out then, and now I think it's back up total to 5.8 billion. So it's been a really successful model. I know there was like a lot of press recently about California having a budget deficit. So I don't know exactly what it was, but if they plug 2 billion of additional tax revenue into that, I'm sure that would close the gap somewhat. So I would recommend it.
Now, I think that in California in particular, it's different in obviously New Jersey because you're talking about corporate companies that are running the casinos there. There's no Native American casinos in New Jersey as far as I know of. But when you're breaking down the actual revenue that that's kind of like a sort of a barrier to entry in California, a little scared the Native American community because, what is it in it for them? And I asked Paris if you could answer this question because you ran a sports wagering platform and to integrate that into or sort of white label it, if you may. What is the breakout? What is the breakdown? And should they be scared? Is revenue there?
Well, historically, California was always one of the biggest states many years ago when people were operating. But that was always in the top 3. So it's clear that it's going to have a massive revenue upswing. There's so many amazing takeaways that can come from New Jersey. Like they were the first, but they also have done it thus far the best. Whether there are partnerships with the tribal organizations and different partners, that's an option that they have. But there's so much with regards to, the opportunities to, start looking at responsible gaming, start looking at, like play for fun, and having everybody understand how the games work, putting in use some AI to trigger people and let them know, maybe it's time to take a break, whatever it might be. But the breakdown with regards to profitability, it's, I think the opportunity is just endless with the amount of money that can bring in sports betting.
Even more than New Jersey, particularly.
Yeah, and that's basic population.
So the GGR for the Native Americans would be pretty high, but then they'd have to cut the pie with like the government, the state government. What's the percentages? I'll ask Anthony. What's the percentages in New Jersey of the breakouts? Like, what does the casino make? What does the online platform make? What does the state make?
That's the proprietary information of our casinos. They can't really share it, the revenue sharing agreements. In terms of what the state makes in New Jersey, so internet gaming is taxed at 15% of gross revenue. Online sports betting is taxed at 14.25%, and then retail sports betting is taxed at 9.25%. So, again, we tax gross revenue in New Jersey. That's why we have somewhat lower percentages, I think, maybe compared to some other states.
But to have no sports betting, then you're getting, if the concern is that we might not get our share of the pie, the reality is you have no pie. Like, get a pie.
Right.
Start sharing it out. But, to even start within the tribal regulation and then work it out. One other point, just about the mobile. The reality is people that are in a casino, in a land-based, are still making their bets mobile.
Right.
Because that has just changed. The things have evolved, and I think sometimes from the regulatory and even just from the perception perspective, there is nobody that wants to walk up, unless it's a memento, we walk up to the counter and make a bet so I can have a piece of paper.
Well, Josh, in your Vegas, I wanted to ask you just quickly, what is the status at the moment? Is there online wagering yet in Vegas?
Sorry, is there
online wagering yet in Las Vegas?
Well, it's not an easy question to answer if we're talking about iGaming in particular, right? If we're talking about sports betting, yes, there is online wagering. From a casino games standpoint or an iGaming standpoint, I believe the regulations are still written as such where you can offer iGaming within the confines of an existing land-based facility. So it's really quite restrictive.
Right. So yeah, I'm going to get to the esports part of this conversation, but we're just sort of kind of laying groundwork right now with understanding the challenges with iGaming and understanding the challenges with the sports wagering. And I'm going to jump down to some of our questions. So with the potential benefits and drawbacks of offering online esports or skill-based games as alternatives to traditional forms of iGaming in California, I mean, what are the potential benefits? What are the drawbacks regarding the online esports and skill-based gaming in regard to if we ever do get iGaming in California, what would those drawbacks be or what would the benefits be? I mean, as we already know, we heard from Pearl, they're trying to lay groundwork for sports wagering. What do you see as the potential upside or the downside?
I think in the earlier panel, they had mentioned you don't have to bet on esports. So I think the real opportunity here is exactly what Agua Caliente is doing with having those people being able to come in and play against each other in their sports bar, but also even bigger events for esports to see what it is. Prior to going to the international tournament in Berlin, I just could not get my head around it. And the reality is, even though this is an esports focused conference in some ways, many of us were not familiar with it. Until you can literally be in the auditorium and see that it's as big as an NBA final. It's massive. But if you don't see it, it's really hard to understand what is the hype around it. If we can create these events to see how it it is legitimate. They have what they put into media into these things. It's that would employ I don't know how many people for any main event. But the opportunity is so people can start getting familiar and understand esports as a sport.
Right. Well, Anthony, in New Jersey at the moment, esports is obviously you can wager on it. In what capacity can you take wagers in esports?
Yeah, absolutely. So in New Jersey, it's basically like sports betting, right? It's a component of sports betting where you can go onto a sports betting app or into one of our sports books, and if they accept wagers on esports tournaments, you can place wagers on an esports contest just like that. In New Jersey, we have what we call the cataloging model, which means before any of our sports books can accept wagers on an event, they need the approval of our director. But we've approved several esports tournaments for wagering. We've seen a lot of wagering on them, particularly during COVID when many of the traditional sports leagues were shut down. So we think that is positive. And to me, I think the advantage of it is you're getting the opportunity to engage a different customer base. And I think one that maybe trends a little bit younger too, and one that maybe not entertained by the same types of gaming equipment that older, generations were entertained by. So I do think it is definitely, I think one of the gentlemen on the last panel had said that it's like another amenity that, you can offer your customers.
Josh, what about you in Nevada? What's the current situation with esports?
It is also legal to wager on esports in Nevada. I believe now that there's been regulation passed where historically you had to register each individual esports event as a special event that could allow wagering in Nevada. that's historically recently, and I'm not going to remember exactly when this happened, but somewhere in the last year or two, regulation now allows wagering on an entire league or series of events from an esports standpoint. So you don't have to go through the added administrative red tape to register each individual esports event as a wagering event. And I agree with what Paris said, right? It's in many ways, esports is big, right? Everyone knows that it's huge globally. It really has yet to build up a big head of steam here domestically in the U.S. But I think through the efforts that the DGE in New Jersey and the Gaming Control Board in Nevada have gone through to pave the way for a regulated sort of environment for esports to take place and for wagering to take place on esports, I think is really the right way forward, so that when momentum does grow, particularly in the gaming space, that we've got a regulatory environment in place that is able to receive that increased activity and really allow it to become accretive to those that are offering esports when the time is right.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I feel like the effort that both New Jersey and Vegas has done, reaching out, they went to the esports community to understand it, to better understand it, to make, I think it's leaps and bounds ahead of where they started. And I think for any state, any regulator, it's so important to engage the community, the experts within that area, in order to get it right and get the momentum. Progress has been really outstanding.
It's interesting you said they went to the community, the esports companies or esports groups. Josh, do you recall any of the esports groups that they did go to? Like that some of the, like the MGMs, the Caesars reached out to?
Yeah. So the esports arena folks obviously had an offering at Luxor, and I think just back to the the legislative and sort of regulatory outreach that happened, at least in Las Vegas and in Nevada, they went to those that are really experts in the field. I know you're going to be hearing from one of my partners, Seth Shore, I think tomorrow, perhaps. He led, he was appointed by the governor at the time to participate in a task force to help figure out what esports ought to look like in Las Vegas and in Nevada, not only from a broad standpoint, but also from a regulatory and a gaming standpoint. So, how you approach this is really so important as it proliferates more broadly across the U.S., outside of New Jersey and outside of Nevada. And it just goes to show, taking the pathway of a solid regulated sort of environment ultimately is going to be the right way forward.
Anthony, I'm going to come to you for this question, but I actually been working with some folks about setting up and creating tournaments in their brick and mortar locations, but and getting and building a community that way. My question is, how, in your experience, we've been laying a lot of sort of train tracks down, regulatory train tracks for the esports, but I don't see, and maybe this is a question for Paris too, I don't see the swell yet. Why is that?
That's more of an economic question. What I can tell you is that you can host tournaments in New Jersey's casinos. If you do, the contestants are actually able to go to the casino page. They can place wagers on themselves to win. In terms of that tournament being open for wagering, you do a couple of hurdles. One is, who is the tournament sponsor, who's considered to be the league. In order to have wagering on the event, there has to be an integrity policy to make sure that nobody's throwing a contest. And then if we open it up to third-party wagering, then it's going to be fair, right? It's not like a fixed match or anything. So you do have some of those hurdles. We've had several tournaments. I know there was the Big Man tournament we had at Hard Rock last year and everything. So I do think it's growing. in terms of, further engagement. And I hope we continue to see more of those tournaments. I think it would be great for New Jersey.
I think, go
As
ahead.
far as the U.S. market goes, it's, their Pinnacle has not taken bets from the U.S. market for since 2007, January 11. But there's seemingly an active audience here. The problem is you've got esports, which has a direct correlation with crypto and these loot games. So when I speak to my ex-colleagues in the industry, it's flat. And where is it going? It's going to the I guess offshore is what you call them, offshore books that are doing crypto and companies that are based somewhere else doing these. I don't even understand that part of the esports, to be honest with you. But that's the problem. At some stage, and that's technically technology with the crypto and the regulation behind the crypto. But as hard as the regulators are working, they still have that hurdle with that external component coming in and kind of taking that market share. So I think that's why it hasn't taken off as much. Because if you can open up an account with a company, barely give them any information and use crypto, that's what you would do. From an esports player perspective, we're talking about an entirely new demographic.
Well, I mean, as Pinnacle takes, you have a very robust community with CS:GO in Europe, no? So,
Yes,
and what's the sort of the difference between what's happened in Europe as opposed to here? Why did CS:GO and the betting on CS:GO, move forward, and you don't have the same kind of phenomenon in the United States?
I think it is there, but at Pinnacle, we wouldn't know because we don't take the U.S. bets. But when you look at esports reports, of what is the revenue for esports, I don't know where they come from, but the amount of activity of U.S. bets on esports within the U.S., I was like, well, who's taking those bets? So the activity's there, but it's not coming to the regulated jurisdictions, and that's the problem.
Well, that's a question for Anthony. How do you make those dark horses in the light, so to speak?
I wish I knew. There wouldn't be an offshore market. No, what I would say is this. I think, and I said this, I believe, in the last conference, is I think New Jersey's model, and this is specific to New Jersey, but of cataloging events where it's not up to a club to take an event, they need to come to us and ask for permission first. I think what you'll see is the more esports events that are approved for wagering, the more robust of an esports offering each legal sports book is going to be able to offer their customers. And as that product offering grows, it's going to appear more attractive to bettors.
I think the last thing to think about is that if you think about it from an operator standpoint, there still is a lack of familiarity with these esports events, on the whole, and so making it easier for these traditional, and I'm talking land-based or online operators, to understand how to correctly position these events and to give them access to appropriate, accredited, accurate data so that they can set and manage lines is also an important piece of the puzzle. Sorry, Paris.
That's the problem. The different esports, it is a very regional, esports is a very broad term. You have Counter-Strike, you have PUBG, League of Legends. In every Korea, they have their specialty. Asia, Southeast Asia, they have more League of Legends. Europe, we found that there was more Counter-Strike. So, I think the key is to say, okay, what is that esport vertical that people are more accustomed to playing with the U.S. market? And then, as Anthony said, then work with them and get the integrity, get the right data, and make sure that you have the ecosystem set up for what is popular within the U.S. player base.
So moving forward then, what you're talking about, Paris, in regards to understanding these different communities. And I guess what I'm doing with some of the properties is starting these local communities, putting that basis in it. What I was doing in regards to preparing or setting a free wagering platform for sports wagering is definitely the way to go. But when we set, or I guess this is in regard to regulation, setting up regulation, and then when you have masses using it, how quick are we able to like change on the dime to be able to change that regulation so that there's protection for the consumer?
I mean, I can tell you that in New Jersey, we fit esports into our existing, licensing regulation model for sports betting. So we don't need new regulations. We don't have regulations that are specific to sports betting. So there is no turnaround time and there is no delay. I mean, I'll say this: the responsibility is not just only on us as regulators in terms of needing to approve events, because what you have is like in the esports community, you'll have maybe like a game publisher wants to host a tournament, but they're not set up like an official league, and that's what we're designed to approve, right? So what we are seeing now is there are several like tournaments and publishers that want to band together and create something more akin to a genuine league where they have an integrity policy and they're able to police those sorts of things. And so, hopefully those efforts lead to, again, more esports events being approved for wagering. And again, I think as you see that happen, you're going to see, the number of total wagers increase.
Josh, now, you work with Seth, and Seth started tournaments at Downtown Grand many years ago. And then I guess they stopped the program, but it was going for a while. I actually was asked to do some work in New Jersey and to do tournaments there. And when I went to the people in promotions and marketing and all the other places, it was like I was asking them for like a unicorn. I mean, they looked at me like, what? Where do I start? And we're going to get to Anthony about this too, but what do you recommend to a casino if they're sort of like deer in the headlights with this kind of opportunity and they don't know really what to do with it?
Yeah, sure. I think you and I have talked about this for years, right? I think the most important thing again is familiarization, right? Familiarization from an operations standpoint. I just touched on familiarization from an offering standpoint about how to position this to your casino customers. Is incredibly important. They're not going to, most operators aren't going to be so focused on it or so aware of it that they'll be able to get there on their own. I think, it would behoove the industry to help educate casinos, continuing with conferences like this to get there. And ultimately, at the same time, it's about keeping your finger on the pulse of what your customers actually want, right? You don't want to necessarily try and force something on them, because what you'll be met with is diminished response and ultimately diminished profitability for a particular event that you might be putting on. And that is the last thing that you want as someone who's really focused on this part of the industry and wants to see it grow. So, being opportunistic with the events, making sure that they're relevant to the particular customer base, taking into account the regionalized comments that Paris just made, I think are all incredibly important parts of the puzzle.
Yeah, and Anthony, it's very good, but as a follow-up to what Josh said, why doesn't the DGE send out to the operators, here are the steps on how you can have or start doing a tournament, or have they?
We have. They're well aware.
So nobody's reading them.
Well, I mean, again, it's their business decision. I mean, getting back to your initial question of how I would advise a casino that might be presented an opportunity like this is never be afraid to innovate. I mean, that's just like general advice. Like if you think, which cell phone provider was it Nokia that didn't want to invest in smartphones because they thought people wouldn't find it appealing to have the internet on their phone? When you don't innovate, you run the risk of getting outpaced by your competitors. So I think it would be, even if they don't see it immediately be lucrative, I do think it's worth it to them because, again, you're getting the opportunity to engage a whole different audience. And what we saw from when we legalized internet gaming is that gives you an opportunity to cross-market to people. It gives you an opportunity to reach out to different people and still get them in your doors. So you know what, they might come to an esports tournament in Tropicana and be like, you know what, I have a lot of fun at this casino. I like going to the pool, I like going to the restaurants, I like the Mexican food they have. They might want to come back. So to me, that's the advice that I would give.
I'm going to get back to iGaming, obviously, and to we're talking about esports particularly, and we touched on sports wagering. But Josh, I'm going to ask you this question. We saw skill-based gaming come out, in 2017, around that time, 2016, with Gamblit and GameCo. My personal view is that the community or the people that would play those games was just not there. I'm asking you what you feel in regard to what happened in that situation.
Yeah. Let me be clear when we're talking about skill-based gaming, I'll keep my comments, specific to companies like Gamblit and GameCo. There's a whole different conversation around skill-based games that is separate to this piece. But I think I don't know that it's been proven broadly yet that the next generation of gamblers that are of age right now really want to gamble on the casino floor, right? And that is what companies like Gamblit and GameCo did. They brought next generation gaming experiences, gambling experiences to the casino floor. The casino floor is very valuable real estate with all the other slot machines and table games that go on there. And the hurdle, right, to success is quite high on that casino floor, because every operator knows that if they replace a skill-based game from a company like GameCo or Gamblit, they know exactly what that game is going to do. So that's the barrier to entry for those companies with these new and innovative type products. And so it was such an uphill battle, where didn't know that the people that were going to play those games were even going to flock to the casino floor in the first place. I think timing is sort of everything when it comes to being innovative, not just in the gaming space, but anywhere. And I wonder if companies like GameCo and Gamblit weren't a little bit too ahead of their time, or perhaps placing their products in parts of the casino or the resort that might not have been the best places for their ultimately for their consumers to play those devices.
Well, we're talking about iGaming, so now that's virtual, so there's no floor space being wasted.
Yep.
Harris, tell me if there's any, have you do or run any peer-to-peer wagering on Pinnacle yet, or skill-based games?
No. I've personally never been a fan of peer-to-peer from a betting perspective, because a peer-to-peer platform would say, you and I are going to make a bet that we're going to play basketball and I'm going to win by 4 points. I will win by more than 3 points. However, but why would, I guess when you're amongst friends, the thing I can never get my head around, and it's just not a space I'm comfortable with, is why would I pay somebody a piece in order to put that bet down? Like, I would say $20, I'm going to beat you by more than 4. So why would I say, I'm going to give $1 to this peer-to-peer platform to accept that bet for us from that skill-based perspective? So, we've never done anything skill-based. I have not personally, somebody can educate me, tell me a hugely successful peer-to-peer betting platform that is working.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know of some, but honestly,
like how successful?
Their revenue is between $1 to $2 million a year. But I want to get back to what you said, because what's the point of playing in that platform and I'm going to go to Anthony because when you talk about playing a peer-to-peer point, and you're saying, well, why would I give some of the money I'm betting to play someone else to this location online with a skill-based game, peer-to-peer wagering, tied back to a land base? Can we give incentives? Is there any regulatory, walls there that would not allow them to do so?
No, I think there's an economic one. So the comparison I would make is obviously like we all know poker to be a peer-to-peer game, but some poker platforms have had the option where like friends can enter their own poker room, right? Well, the only way that the operator was making money off of that was taking a little bit percentage of the pot in each round. When everybody is familiar with each other, that percentage becomes very noticeable. That's exactly like Paris said. It's like, why am I cutting in this operator when I could just have this game at home? And so I think that is the issue that you face by doing something like that. We do have regs that approve skill-based gaming. It's not popular. The two kinds of skill-based you have to get pure skill-based, which casinos just are not very interested in. They do not want to put a machine on the casino floor and get worked over by like the 22-year-old wizard from like Tokyo. We have had what GameCo tried to produce, which was like a hybrid type of machine, where it was basically, it looked like a video game. There was a random number generator basically determining, let's call it how many points you could earn at each level and how much money you could win. So there was an element of chance, but your skill within that element of chance also could increase the amount of money you were able to win. The games were not popular. They were yanked off the floor. I don't think that was a problem with the games. I think it was a good concept. I think it maybe didn't receive enough time or the attention or the marketing that it needed to succeed. And I think if you built out that concept of different games, I do believe it ultimately would have been successful. So hopefully it is a sign though of things to come, and somebody else can pick up on that idea, or GameCo could come back, whatever, and expand on that, because I do think a model like that in the future would probably need a lot more success than it did initially.
But yet I see some things like the regulation going on in Pennsylvania for some of the skill-based games that are popping up in 7-Elevens and stuff in these land-based little places that sort of in that gray area, that aren't exactly gambling, they're sort of in that space, but Pennsylvania's saying, okay, we give up, we can make revenue on this, and let's bring them into the fold. I'm going to touch on that. But then you also have, the situations where, these are I just see that skill is definitely going to be part of the sort of repertoire of the entertainment value that's being given by casinos. What I do find very, very amusing, and you might find this funny, Josh, too, is that Golden Nugget in Atlantic City, their online space, created a Street Fighter slot game. It's a slot machine that's a Street Fighter theme. Now, if that, honestly, to a Street Fighter person, and I know a lot of people in the Street Fighting community, they find that quite insulting. It is really sort of like what? You want me to play your game and you're using my theme, my precious, characters on a slot machine? No, I'm not going to do that. But how can you? What do you say to what's going on in Pennsylvania with the skill base?
I would say that they can do whatever they want to do when they're side of the River.
That sounds cute. That's cute. What about you, Josh? And I mean, how does Vegas and Nevada? I mean, these guys who are creating these skill-based machines in Pennsylvania, you think that they're not going to spread across the country? I guess in Vegas they'll definitely do something. They'll kick them out right away.
Yeah, I don't see that happening in Vegas. I mean, typically you see those types of games pop up in places where there's a vacuum, right? Where there's a demand for a particular type of game, and there's not a regulated gaming environment that's already in place for that, say places like Pennsylvania. So I ultimately there's got to be some sort of convergence there where maybe those types of skill-based game manufacturers enter into a regulated environment that folks like Anthony work so hard to create. and others around the country. Maybe they decide that they don't. I don't know, but it seems like there's a little bit too much friction there, and differentiation between the two right now to have it continue to exist like that. That's my guess.
Yeah. You want to say something, Paris?
Coming from a pure betting background, it's always interesting for me when I see, the skills concept. That has been since 2003. There was a company that was touting it to all the publicly listed companies. I think it was called Skills with a C, but then.
Yeah, that actually, Andrew Paradise is speaking from Skills tomorrow.
Right, that's different,
yeah.
But there was a huge thing where everybody that was publicly listed had to sign up, because everybody on the street, if you will, for the publicly listed companies, if you didn't sign up for it, then you might be missing something. And that was back in the day of, making decisions for the market, not for a business. And so it had started way back then, and it has never taken off. All the sports books signed up for it. 888.com, they wanted an exclusive, they paid an extra few $100,000 for it. And they had two people that bet money on this, and it was all, literally stay-at-home moms.
Yeah.
But there's a couple components to it. From a technology perspective, it's easy to build.
Right.
So everybody wants to get into the gaming space because they have done a great job in Vegas and many other states and New Jersey regulating it. And it's like, okay, we're going to be innovative. And then they come up with these products, and it's a buzzword.
Right.
Blockchain was a buzzword. Skills games was a buzzword. And, it probably has a place, but either it needs to be more, it will come organically.
Right.
There should be a world of betting on skills games. That's my personal.
Yeah, if I could just jump back in, I think part of the issue too with it is using that skill-based gaming distinction to avoid regulation as casino gaming and a game of chance. So, that can be considered like a legal term bar in a gaming jurisdiction, right? Normally gambling is defined by a game of chance. There's an element of chance to it. We're familiar with some of those sites. We get the phone calls about them, Roblox, Chumbo. We see what's going on in other states, like Michigan, so their cease and desist letter and everything. I think our evaluation has been, is this social gaming? Is this real money gaming? We take the approach to that first, because for my agency, we regulate real money gaming. So we have to say, hey, is this, does this fall in the ambit of our jurisdiction? If not, somebody else has to look at this. So, I think that's been the issue for us before we, really even approach the topic.
All right, so I'm gonna have last question, and then we're gonna break. We'll go to you, Josh, first. How do you anticipate iGaming and sports wagering legislation, we're getting back now to the state of California, evolving in California over the next decade, and what role will online esports or skill-based games play in this evolution?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I think you'll see iGaming. Well, I think you'll probably see sports wagering roll out first, only because there was a bit of momentum on that front already. That said, I still think you're going to see, this is still a couple of years out, right? The first sort of real go at it left, I think it left a bad taste in voters' mouths, just because they were so confused about what was going on with the competing questions there, so or ballot initiatives. So I think it still is a couple years out. It's tough to call how commercial card rooms and tribal organizations work together to create some regulation and legislation that benefits everybody broadly. It would be great to see iGaming come in at the same time there. I think the operators would agree with that. In terms of esports, it really just, in my mind, it all gets back to demand. And if there's demand to bring esports along with that sort of first or that next legislative and regulatory push, then great. skill-based games, depending on which definition of skill-based games we're talking about right now, I don't see, as being sort of a prominent component of that next wave of momentum.
Right. Harris?
If the esports, different verticals, if we get the leagues in place, that would accommodate not only New Jersey, but it could potentially accommodate California. It could be a nice first step. That would be an opportunity for sure. And again, with the demographic and, just the getting a brand new grouping in, I think it would be a nice first step to get the younger generation, and then you bring in the sports betting, and then likely maybe iGaming will follow
Mm-hmm.
The advice I would give to California is that our experience in New Jersey with internet gaming and sports betting has been overwhelmingly positive. I think if you can find a way to have a robust offering where it's open to the whole state, you don't have internet wagering just limited to the physical confines of the land-based casino, I think it could be enormously lucrative, and I think it could be very positive for the citizens of California. Certainly with responsible gaming initiatives, they are much, much easier to track on internet, because you can have a player go into their account, they can set a limit on how much time they spend in their account, how much money they deposit, how many overall wagers they place, how much money they lose. You can have a responsible gaming professional contact them if the app is keeping track of it. They say, hey, man, this person bet way more money this week than they did last week, things like that. So a lot of the social issues associated with gaming, you actually have better control over in the internet wagering space. So, I think to me, it's like let everybody have their piece of the pie, and if you can come up with a commercial model that's open to the whole state, look at it, because California is, it's a huge state, and I think it has enormous potential.
Well said.
All right. So, Josh, thank you so much. Paris and Anthony, you guys did a great job. Thank you very much. And we'll see you at Josh, I guess we'll see you whenever. Thanks. The rest of the evening tonight or afternoon, we're going to have coffee. Welcome to coffee. And then my brother and I are going to talk a little bit about the CEC, about what we're doing with it and where we're going with this this whole vertical. Why we've been doing this since 2017. So go grab some coffee, snack, whatever you want, and meet us back here.